I'm Mrs. Painter. Welcome to my kitchen. Please like, share, and subscribe. Today we are making apple pie filling. We are so lucky. Our apple tree produced more apples this year, and I'm hoping to get 7-quart jars. So to start, I have a big pot. It's actually my pressure canner. We're not going to be doing pressure canning today, but it's the only pot I have big enough to hold 7 quarts. And I'm starting by sterilizing the jars. We're actually going to sterilize these jars for 10 minutes. And to start, we need to go ahead and start working on these apples. So some of these are pretty blemished. These were the worst ones off the tree. So to start, we're actually going to cut those nasty spots off. So the parts that I cut off the apple, they're going to go into the compost pile. But I have a bowl here, and we're going to use that bowl to put our skins in it and even the cores, because we're going to want to make vinegar with the scraps that we don't use in a pie. And we have a bowl of water here. I'm going to add a teaspoon of citric acid in it. And I might have to up my game up a little bit in time as we get more apples. It's actually the first time I've used one of these. Now we want these apple slices to be about a 1/2 inch thick so that they process properly in the water bath canning method. I would probably lose less apple if I just took those cores out by hand. And it makes it easier to slice them. Get nicer slices for the pie. I moved our apple peels into a smaller bowl because I'm going to need another glass bowl to continue putting our apples in as we slice them up. All right, our jars have boiled for 10 minutes, so they're sterilized. I finished peeling, coring, and slicing the apples. I did add a little more water and citric acid to my bowls. Now we need to know exactly how many apples we have so we can get our syrup correct. We started with 6 pounds of apples. Let's go ahead and measure our apples. One. 15. 20. So right about 21 cups of apples. So I'm going to take a minute to go ahead and adjust my recipe for the syrup. Let's go ahead and keep our water with citric acid on these. Do have a little bit of browning taking place, but it's not too bad. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and mix up our syrup. I've adjusted the recipe for 21 cups of apples. We're going to start with 6.5 cups of water. Let's go ahead and turn this on. And we're going to want 3/4 cup of lemon juice. And I'm going to juice the lemons. So I have some water reserved on the side because we're going to mix our clear gel into that. A lot of the older recipes call for cornstarch for thickening, but it's no longer considered safe to put cornstarch in canned recipes. All right, we're up to 3/4 cup of lemon. We're going to add this into our water, which is heating up. Next, we're going to want to add our sugar in there. So let's go ahead and do 2.5 cups of brown sugar. that in, make sure we get a true measurement. All right, there's 1 cup. And while we're doing this, I'm going to go ahead and turn some water on. We're going to blanch our apples before we add them to the jars. So let's go ahead and get that going. That's our 2nd cup of brown sugar. And now we need a 1/2 cup. Let's do our white sugar. And yes, I buy sugar in bulk. So that's 1. All right, that's 2.5 cups of white sugar. All right, let's go ahead and add our ginger. We need 3/4 of a teaspoon. 3/4 of a teaspoon of nutmeg. And we need 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon. There's 1. And let's go ahead and put in a teaspoon of vanilla. Let's give this a little stir again. So the next part of this is we're going to want to combine our clear gel into some water. So I have 2 cups of water here and a little whisker. And we're going to add 1.5 cups of clear gel into our water. There's 1 cup. It really mixes in a lot like cornstarch, but I guess they've modified this to make it safe for the canning process. All right. Add another 1/4 cup. And another 1/4 cup. Just get this nice and blended. All right, there we go. Go ahead and add this in. I'm going to turn this down to a very low setting. So I actually think our clear gel solution is about thick enough, so I'm going to shut the heat off on that. And let's get our apples blanched. So we're going to want to blanch our apples for 1 minute. And you can add a little bit of water if you need to, if the syrup becomes too thick. And actually what I want to do here is let's go ahead and get our jars out, because I am going to add the apples to the jar when they're blanched. All right, so I cleared a few things out of the way. Let's go ahead and get our jars out. And be very careful because this is hot. That's how I do it. Tell me how you do it. let's turn this back on low so it stays hot. And we're ready to go ahead and put our apples in to be blanched. All right, let's let this go for a minute. I have a canning funnel here. Should make it easier to get the apples into the jars without making a mess. Stir our syrup. And yeah, we're going to want to add a little bit of water to this. This is a little thicker than I want. There's our timer for the first batch. See me adding them to the jar. Turn this a little bit. All right, so to start, I'm only going to fill them about 3/4 full. Let's set our timer for a minute. And let's go ahead and add some water in. And that is too big for that. Just set it right here. Let's add some water in. So our mixture back here has gotten a little thicker than we're going to want it to be. I've added 2 cups of water back in. All right, our last batch to be blanched. Let's clear a little bit of this stuff out of the way to make room for the final part. And I have the apples evenly distributed between the jars. So this sauce is pretty, or syrup I should say, is really pretty thick. All right, let's just mix this around a little bit. Get our syrup evenly distributed. All right, I think that's about perfect. Okay, the next step is we want to wipe our jars using some white vinegar, because even though I use the canning funnel, I'm pretty sure there's an opportunity for some of this wonderful sticky syrup to be on the rim, which would affect our sealing. Alrighty, now we're ready to apply our lids and our bands. It's funny, for some reason I thought I was doing 7 jars, but I must have just adjusted it because I knew the batch was going to be slightly smaller than I anticipated. All right, let's add these to our canner. We are at 2,000 feet above sea level, so I'm going to be processing these jars for 30 minutes. If you're under 1,000 feet above sea level, you could process them for 25 minutes. Also, Cooperative Extension Services have some good information on that. Now we're going to have to bring this back up to a boil before we can start our timer. So let me just set this lid on there. It won't be long. So while we're waiting for our water bath canner to get up to temperature, let's just taste our simple syrup. I want to see what that tastes like. Because you know I'm not going to be opening any of the jarred pie filling until we're ready to make a pie, but let's just see what this part tastes like. Wow, it tastes really good. And you know, there's not even any apples in this. The apples hadn't even gone into this, but it really does kind of have an apple taste. Our water is boiling, so let's turn our timer on. We are setting our timer for 30 minutes. So while our apple pie filling is processing, I thought, why not go ahead and make that vinegar, since vinegar is super quick and fast to make with our apple peels. And so I went ahead and I grabbed some herbs from the garden. In these 2 jars, I have fennel with apple peels, and I'm actually going to add a little more fennel into this one, and then some lemon basil. And then just go ahead and add the rest of these apple peels. I learned how to make vinegar from watching Heidi on Rain Country. She is my absolute favorite channel. Seriously, check her out if you're into homemaking. But it is so easy to make vinegar. I'm going to put these peels up to about 3/4 full in the jar. This is one of those videos where nothing goes to waste. All right, so now I'm just going to add water to these jars. Just one moment. Filtered water to the jars. And now I'm just going to take a little bamboo stick and just mix this up a little bit. And every day for 2 weeks, I'm going to come out and I'm going to give this a little mix every morning or in the evening, whatever your choice is. I'm going to cover it. This is a form of lactobacillus fermentation. And after 2 weeks, I'm going to strain the peels out, and then I'm going to let the jars continue to sit for 2 months. You probably could use them after 1 month, but definitely for me personally, I like to let it go for 2 months. And don't forget to label your jars. You want to know the date that you started, and you want to know what it is. So apple vinegar, August 29th. All right, our timer's going off. Let's go ahead and turn this stuff off. Heat off. Let's get our hot pads. We have one hot lid here. And let's use our canning tongs to take our jars out. Look at this. So from start to finish, this project has taken me 2.5 hours. Anytime you try something new, carve yourself some time out, give yourself an afternoon. I'm going to let these cool for several hours. In fact, I'm just going to leave them on the counter until tomorrow morning. You don't want to disturb the lids because you could break the seals. I hope you enjoyed canning apple pie filling with me today and the little side benefit of making some apple vinegar.